I'm done. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to How to Be Funny. Usually you have two white guys on the internet, making a podcast telling you stuff, but this is one podcast where you have one black guy, and I guess we do have a white guy in the building, but he's
I don't know, a tan guy. Let's say
I
a tan guy.
mean, he's tan. He ain't like white, like a British white or American white. No, no, no. This guy
Yeah,
is.
I'm Portuguese white, the like
Woo.
colonizer white. That's why I've got this tan.
He's a different type of white, right here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Andre De Freitas.
Woo!
What's
Cheers,
up, man?
bro. Good to see you. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Good to catch up.
Thank you very much. Andre is from Portugal. Me and Andre met last year when we were doing the Amused Moose competition, some comedy competition in London. Shout out to them. It's a pretty big competition, and I got to meet Andre. We had a cool chat about comedy. Ended up having a burger whilst the rest of the people were still performing. But that's what comedians do, man. We're like a tribe, an international tribe, as Andre was saying. And today's episode is just me introducing Andre to my audience and getting some tips from him and getting to know him so that when he blows up, y'all can be like, we discovered him first over here, that sort of thing. So yeah.
Hey, same goes for you, bro. You're doing a platform. When you blow up, people are gonna be like, shit, I need to get on Nelson's podcast.
Game recognizes game, brother. All right, so Andre, man, first of all, we usually start by people's background stories, man. So how did you get in the game?
Okay, I love it how you're asking the game because it's true. It's a hustle. Um, I the first time I did stand up, I think it was because it was on my bucket list. I just thought it was one of those things everyone should do before they die, and I guess I thought I was going to die early because I did it when I was like 18. And I just loved it. I mean, first time I was so nervous, I fell off the stage. But once you get those laughs in, oof, I don't know what crack cocaine is like, but it feels like that felt like pretty close to crack.
Yeah, listen, I have done crack cocaine and stand-up comedy is way better.
And hopefully suck a little less dick. I mean, you still have to suck some dick.
You gotta do that, but yeah, I like that analogy, man. It's like with comedy for a lot of people, it's like it's that bucket list type of thing. You're always curious about, hey man, can I do this? Can I try? For me, I just had to get on some open mic and basically just talk. And when I first started, I didn't have proper jokes. I just had things that I had said over the years, and then I was hoping people would laugh, that sort of thing. I didn't know what a joke. I didn't know how to structure jokes, I think, until a few months later when I did started like, well, what was the first joke that you say that you're like, oh shit, this is the one right here?
Um, that's a good question. I think the first joke I really liked,
Mm.
and I thought, wow, this is an actual joke that I've kind of stopped using, but I every now and again I do use, which was like just the joke was the other day my mom asked me what I wanted for dinner. I said, surprise me. And she told me I was adopted. And that was like one of the first jokes. I'm like, yeah, that's a joke. And that came from you.
That's a joke. The idea of actually creating something that you're like, whoa, that's when you start feeling like, yeah, I can't wait to go on stage. For me, when I first started in my early days, right, I had this joke about 50 Shades of Grey. So 50 Shades of Grey was a big thing at that time. And I was just like, I need to write a joke about this. So I managed to just about write a joke where I was like, the punchline was basically, Okay, so the joke is I try to recreate 50 Shades of Grey with my wife. She ends up whipping me. And the punchline is we're meant to recreate 50 Shades of Grey, but we ended up recreating 12 Years a Slave. And I was just like, every time I say that joke, bro, for like years, it got a reaction. And it got to a point where I was just like, I cannot say this joke anymore. So I only stopped using it a few years back. But that was just like that joke got me.
That was the joke. I mean, you had like, I don't know how, you started with 5-10 minutes of material,
Yeah.
whatever, and it's all shit. But you've got that one line there, and you're just like looking forward the whole set to saying it's almost coming, it's almost coming, and you just think this is the one's gonna save me, because you're like, that's the thing about stand up. That's a fucking bitch. People are like, oh my god, like I do it once. Like, actually, most people who do it the first time have a great set.
Yeah.
Like there's a mix between your energy and your excitement to be there that helps selling the jokes, even though the quality isn't amazing. And
Yeah.
there's also the fact that the audience is on your side when they know it's the first time. What they don't tell you is that fucking 10 times after, no one's gonna give it, no one's gonna laugh, your friends aren't gonna be there, you're not selling the jokes with the same time, like, enthusiasm, and you realize these jokes are shit, but you don't have any other jokes and you just want to keep going, so you just keep saying these shit jokes over and over and over again, hoping that in the midst of the shit you find a little gold nugget and you're like, you grab onto that.
Yeah. Now, and it can also be the opposite, right? So some people, the first gig is like the worst gig. They're like, oh shit, that went so bad. I'm not going to try it ever again. But what they don't know is that if you start out bad, right? Like in the early stages, it's all about continuing, because maybe by the 10th gig, you might actually get that laugh that you've been dying, and you'll be like, wait, I don't get it. All so
it's like Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, it gets better. Stay in the program. Just keep doing it. One gig at a time, right? And it's just like, why do we put ourselves through such punishment?
My friend, I have a friend, Fahan, who when I was starting out, we used to sit down and write together. And he always say that there must be so many people out there who gave up on comedy careers that could have been worth millions just because they didn't realize that that first gig doesn't define you.
Yeah. I don't think the first gig defines you. I don't think the 100th gig defines you. I don't think the 300th gig defines you. And actually, sometimes you get really big opportunities that in your mind you think are big. And you think, oh my God, if I win this final of this competition, or if I smash this gig because that person's in the crowd, my life's going to change. But the majority is that those gigs don't define you either. And even if you do really well, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. You have the odd case of someone smashing a gig at the right time, at the right place, and that takes it. But for the majority of people, it's a lot of those gigs throughout the years, right? It's a build-up. It takes a long time. And you just have to almost like, I think one of the biggest difficulties of being a comic is that every time you go on stage, it's an audition. Your spot's never earned. You're only as good as your last gig. So you have to like work out so much, so often, so you could get to a level of consistency. And that's really like the hard thing. It's because you forget it. You lose the momentum if you don't do it.
It's like a sport, and the idea of development in comedy is very important because there's so many comedians out there that might be a bit similar to you, or might just be on some very different paths to you, like, but you're going to perform with them at some point because you have no choice over who the promoter is going to book at some of these clubs. So one thing that I noticed early on is that when it comes to stand-up comedy, it's a solo journey. Like the development aspect of it, right? You have to be really conscious of the fact that these competitions, like you said, they're very good, but like it's you who determines what level you're at. You have to just know that just because I've opened for this person or just because I've done this, it's not necessarily it doesn't necessarily mean that I've gone up levels or stuff like that. You have to be really brutally honest with your progression and how you do your checklist and how to work out good opportunities and whether they push you in the right direction, that sort of thing, to a point where ultimately it's the whole picture that pushes you forward rather than just one gig, another gig, that sort of thing.
100%. I totally agree. I've had some good opportunities um, come my way, and sometimes it's easy to like kind of let your ego fly a little bit, being
Yeah,
like, "Hey, I'm some fucking hot shit now. You know, I should be doing this. I should be getting paid this much or
yeah,
whatever." And you have to, I guess, like you said, it's like you have to kind of take yourself a step back. I think the pandemic's really done
mm,
that. I mean, if I was pretty comfortable with like my level and rhythm of how I was working before the pandemic, and I was like, I'm on like I'm rising because I'm getting up a lot.
yeah,
I'm going through a good phase. Then the pandemic took away all the momentum,
mm,
and I feel like restarting now. I don't know how if you agree with that. It's man, I feel like I'm back from scratch.
mm,
You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
like before we're trying to build a name, so whatever like little momentum we had was super helpful
yeah,
to our little community,
mm,
and that goes away so quickly because now
yeah,
you have to just restart the process all over again. You have to like, and I actually think it's more frustrating because when you start out you don't know any better. You
yeah, you
just do
don't.
it. Now you know you've been better, and it's
Mm,
frustrating when you just can't do it. You're just like, what's going on? It's the lack of practice. It's why is this joke they used to kill doesn't get a reaction
yeah,
anymore? So it's actually like it's harder when you find out that you were performing at a higher level than you are now, and you
mm,
just can't seem to be getting there, and it just takes time. I think that's going to be, for me at least, the biggest challenge going into the new world
yeah,
is just be patient with myself and listen. It'll probably take maybe a year or something of
mm,
regular gigging for you to feel like where you were at before. But yeah, but because you know that you can do it, it's actually harder
yeah.
because you beat yourself up more, I think. Do you feel the
It,
same way?
yeah, I definitely feel the same way. I feel like the lockdown or 2020 in general, the whole year that we've just had taken out, it gave me a lot to think about because I started really just thinking about okay, so I have this metaphor, right? There's these little tribes that live near places where there's always floods. So every year or 2 years there's like a massive flood that comes in and wipes everything away. So I started looking at stand-up the same way. I was like, all these structures, all these comedy clubs, all these like competitions, and to some extent even agents, all these are like things that can get washed away. What remains is you, the comedian.
A hundred
So
percent.
you have to have a career that can, or at least like you said, we didn't know it before the pandemic, but now I kind of know that with the way the world works, I have to develop a career that can sustain any natural disaster. Like if people, if like a flood comes, wives, if I lose an agent or if there's comedy clubs that are not booking, I have to constantly be in a way where I can at least entertain my audience. And I've realized that the relationship between the comedian and the audience is the most important. All these other things can get washed away. They can be another lockdown and they can say, oh, no one can perform comedy. And all of these things can go away. But the one thing that remains is the people that like your comedy and you giving them what they like. That react relationship that's the most important thing. That's all there is.
Totally, I agree. I think it's important. I mean, every day you open Twitter and you see, you know, like someone's been canceled, someone's like done this, someone's done that.
Mm.
They've lost everything. All you see is just a row of, agency, like manager, whatever, like can't like these people lost everything. Then what you have is yourself or your audience. And I was like, the canceled is a good example of obviously something like pushed to the extreme,
Mm.
but something might happen in which you have a disagreement with your management or this or that, and you go away. And if you bank your career on them,
Mm.
then when they're gone, you've got nothing. I mean, those comedy club contacts, the way to develop your brand, that's all got to come from you, because
Yeah.
ultimately the only person who cares that much about you is you. Like no one cares
This
about
is
your career that
this
much.
this is the stuff that this is the reason why I did do this podcast, man. Because like you saying that and me saying that, like there's people that will follow you and people that follow me that will listen to this, and that might change how they approach, man. I believe in this stuff that we're talking about, and I believe in the importance of all this. Like, you need to have a career that sustains itself, man. All these,
Yeah.
no one knows whether this is the last pandemic we're going to have.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, for me, what's also was really important within the pandemic is like,
Mm.
obviously I was, you know, making my living off comedy. I wasn't living, I was surviving off comedy. So I was
Yeah.
living gig to gig. It's
Mm.
$300 to like get from this place to that
Yeah.
place, where I get another 200, and then
Mm.
I can manage to get here and
Mm.
there. And you
Mm.
kind of do that. Once the gigs have been like kind of wiped away, you know, lost all income, you kind
Yeah.
of have to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, it was good that I was getting all the station, but I'm like,
Mm.
how can I, you know, who are the people
Yeah.
that are really making money off the
Mm.
comedy, right? Who is profiting off all of this? Because it's
Mm.
not us.
It's
We
not.
we hope, right? We hope and we pray that some agent that doesn't give a shit about comedy, that's just a job, will approve of who you are, of
uh
what you've worked so hard to do. You hope a promoter or a producer of
mm.
some series, of some show or whatever, will look at you and be like, you're good enough to be in a whatever. So we're always kind of, even though it's, you know, very independent, you're kind of always looking for outside approval
Yeah.
from people that don't know nearly as much
Oh.
about comedy as you do. So I got thinking out, okay, so I want to be in the money making
Mm.
situation. So who are the people that are making? They're the producers. They're the people that are putting stuff on. They're kind of behind the scenes. So big work for me in the pandemic was kind of understanding this structure a little bit more. Is like, and how can I get involved
Mm.
in also, you know, creating something that um, that I can benefit from. So, for example, you're saying, "Oh, come down to Norwich. I got some great nights, whatever." So
Mm.
you're working as like, you know, a micro producer within your own world, within your own stuff, which is really smart.
Mm.
And that's kind of what I want to create here, because the people have really succeeded. And I mean, look at all the great comedians. A lot of their income comes from their comedy platforms. They say,
Yeah.
like, you know, All Things Comedy. Bill Burr is producing.
Mm.
Bill Burr's company that produces either albums or comedy specials or whatever,
Mm.
and then they sell them, right? So they've got their own career, but they're getting passive income from
Mm.
everywhere, which is what you want. You want to be able to get passive income from other sources
Yeah.
of the industry. So for me now, there's been a work of like, okay, how can I set something up, for example, here in Portugal that's underdeveloped, and how can I help create a structure that supports new talent being nurtured, that
Mm.
supports regular gigging, and that I can also benefit from, and have some income coming in, is say like, hey, if I'm gigging in Belgium
Yeah.
and there's a gig happening in Portugal, I
Mm.
have a little piece of that,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
So that's what you want. This is what like all of the guys that we're constantly trying to impress do.
Yeah.
You're just a cog in the fucking machine. You're a mindless worker. You're just
Yeah.
going there and you do it. And even like, okay, so now, okay, you have your podcast. A sponsor wants to come on. Great, right? Even then it's a sponsor. Then you have to kind of appeal to the sponsor, whatever. What ideally you want to have is a structure in which
Mm.
other things fit within that structure,
Yeah.
and you're getting a little piece of this and that, and you kind of let people manage their own stuff.
Yeah.
And I think this is like a great time for us, the talent, to kind of take back some
Mm.
power. I mean, you see the guys that have blown up on social media, they hold all the cards. They've got
Yeah.
their audience. They can do it everything by themselves. They're fucking multi-talented. I don't know how
Yeah.
they do some of this shit with the editing and like the self-production. It's all, they hold all the cards. They don't need an
They don't.
outside structure.
No, do you know, like or you've just made a great point, because even though people like, okay, well, when you're a comedian who's come up through TikTok, the natural criticism that you're going to get is that, oh, He hasn't been on stage. He doesn't know what it's like. But the one advantage that you have over most comedians is that if you're really good at that TikTok online stuff, you have 100,000 people ready to listen to you, man. All those TikTok people can get 10,000, the crazy numbers that like professional comedians are really working their way up to. And I always just think like, if these TikTok guys, right, if you have someone who has that big of a following and can also do stand up, they're sorted. They don't need an agent because an agent
Yeah,
is just going to be taking a percentage of what something that the guy has worked. I don't understand.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, in my friend, a comedian, comic named Tamer Katan, he said this,
I
and I
know
think it's a
him.
great, you know him.
I know
Okay.
him, legend.
So, so Tamer said this, which I think is a great point, which is it's easier to turn a stand-up comedian into a YouTuber than it is for a YouTuber to become a stand-up comedian.
Uh,
You know what I mean? And I think this is
yeah,
really true because you could be a very successful stand-up YouTuber, but to become a stand-up, there's just no way other than the stage, the time, and you have to kind of build up to it.
yeah,
And but for the stand-up comedian, you kind of like it's easier to turn whatever your creativity into some content. For
yeah.
me, the biggest struggle is that I often don't have the technical skills that are required. And to be honest, I just fucking don't want to spend hours of my day editing shit.
Yeah. Nah, YouTube is like when you've done the stage, man. When you've got that reaction, those rounds of applause is, that there's nothing like the
Nothing,
stage,
man.
man.
There's no amount of likes. There's no amount
There's
of
no,
comments.
oh,
Yeah. And I think that's definitely true in what he said is like, you don't, you can become anything that you want. And I think comics have done that to a certain degree with the
yeah,
podcast and with the new formats and, and all of that. But ultimately, if you want to be, I remember 2 years ago, I went to the Comedy Store in LA
yeah,
and I performed there. I did a 5 minute spot at the Belly Room, which was like a huge achievement for me.
yeah,
And first person I bumped into was like Anthony Jeselnik, who was there, and
yeah,
Mark Maron was there, and all these people. So I went to hang out at backstage, and one of them was like, "Oh, so where you guys are?" Oh, we're coming in from London, whatever. And you always, they're like, "How long have you been doing comedy?" I was like, "Oh, 5 years." And I was always at that frustration, like, "But I'm not big yet." Like, well, other people are bigger. In like the American comics are like, "Bro, talk to me in 10 years." You know what I
yeah,
mean? You're a
yeah,
fucking stain. Like you're
yeah,
nothing. Yeah.
yeah.
You know what and so it's it's time. It's time that you just got to put in and
The ten,
and even though
the
yeah, go ahead.
the 10,000 hours theory
The 10,000 hours exactly.
in.
And it's also, I mean, even though you're saying stand-up comedy is kind of a lonely pursuit, I agree that to an extent
Mm,
because when you're on stage, you're by yourself. When you're writing, you're by yourself. But actually, everything else around is quite collaborative,
yeah.
right? This idea of like, I want to have people that I like on my podcast. I want to
Mm,
give them a platform. And I also want to share the stage. When I'm thinking of building a lineup, who you're thinking of your friends, the people that you're
yeah.
coming up with, the people that you like. So it is collaborative in a way. It's just that when it comes down to the thing, you either get the laugh or you don't. And then the rest, it can be super collaborative. You can write with other people, you can write pilots, you can write shows, you can
Yeah.
do podcasts, and yeah, I think it's all about creating your own community in a way.
Well, I'm trying to create an international community right now. And have you done comedy in another language?
Yeah, I've done it in Portuguese.
Is it the same? Like,
No, it's not. English is I prefer English much more. Uh, Portuguese is a difficult language
yeah.
because it's a very old language. So, like for example, when you say a word in English,
Mm,
depending on how you say it and which context it is, that same word can have multiple different meanings, right? Like
yeah.
can have multiple meanings. Like when you say fuck
Mm,
can mean 10 different things.
yeah.
Whereas Portuguese, because it comes from Old Latin,
Yeah.
is a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
So when you say a joke in English, you'll kind of have that classic cadence of na. Whereas if you say in Portuguese, sometimes translating something takes an extra 5 to 10 words. And that makes
Oh,
all the difference in the rhythm. So instead
yeah.
of going na, you go na. And that's not as funny. That rhythm's just not as funny.
No, that's crazy. Okay. Do you know, I speak another language as well. I speak Shona, which is a Zimbabwean language. And I even though I can deliver jokes in the language, there's just there's something about English that allows you to just have this rhythm where it's like flowing. Because with Shona as well, because the culture, like there's still certain things that are taboo, you know. In English, you can make dick jokes. A dick joke in English just sounds playful. Hey man, I was just you know.
Yeah. Anything in English can sound like. But
It's
have
so
you done gigs in Zimbabwe?
No, no, I haven't. Although I'm now looking into doing that because what I'm trying to do now is I'm now trying to market myself back home and go and say, even though I spent all these years in England and stuff, I am just like you, and I'm just gonna do my jokes that show them that I am just like them. So that's the idea. So I'm also trying to get into these spaces like the reason why I brought up the question is also because in Brazil they speak Portuguese, and I haven't interviewed someone from Brazil yet, and that's like another place that I'd like to. I want to be global, bro. That's just how.
Yeah. Well, during the pandemic,
Mm.
I started with another comedian, Luca Capani. Do you know Luca?
I've heard of him, weirdly enough.
Yeah, so we started this thing called the Comedians of Europe. So it's a collective of comics and promoters from all parts of Europe or residents in Europe
Yeah,
that come together to kind of showcase and promote European talent.
yeah,
So now we're having Comedians of Europe shows pop up in loads of places. So there are a lot of different people that are part of this guild, if you want to
yeah,
call it
yeah.
community. So it's not attached to one person. So for example, right now there's in Barcelona Comedians of Europe show happening with a guy from Finland and a guy from Czech Republic and people from Barcelona,
Oh,
whatever. And then
yeah.
next week there's going to be a Comedians of Europe in Porto, here in Portugal,
Ah,
where it's going to be me, Victor Patrishkan from Romania, and Tamer, who's now living in Portugal. So,
how
there's
about me? I need to join you.
get involved, bro. Get involved. Yeah, the idea here is that we take back the power a little bit. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like that was the whole point of, especially because in the UK, a lot of the times people have these kind of specific ideas of what different is,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
And we just always felt like a lot of the Europeans that were there, we just always felt like, you know what? We immigrated to the UK by ourselves,
mm,
not our parents. We
mm,
did.
yeah.
We were the first generation. We did to comedy, but you don't want to listen to us because you don't think our perspective as Europeans. So there was always just like a huge thing for us that we just feel like no one gave a shit about us because we were European.
Do you know
And then,
what? Like,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry to cut you off. And also, like, I literally that all of that is something that I've kind of felt this energy towards, but you explaining it just makes more sense. So go on, like, let me know, man.
Yeah, no, that's it. So the idea came from all of us feeling like, you know what I mean? All of these, I actually think it ridiculous when you fill out a form and they ask you what race you are and what kind of white you are, if you're white European, if
Yeah,
you're white this, English or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I just felt like people in the UK and the US are always banging on about diversity and all this sort of stuff. But we just felt like, hey, we've got interesting things to say
yeah,
because the people who make up the immigrant community of England are mostly either kind of Europeans kind of going in and
mm,
working at cafes, restaurants, and having these businesses, or a lot of like big African community,
yeah,
that also comes in and kind of small business owners and stuff like that. And I feel like some parts of the audience of the community were being
yeah,
catered to, but not others not, and they didn't want to hear what we just didn't feel like we were different enough.
yeah,
So then they came, well, let's, now that the UK has kind of left Europe, let's try to like make Europe a thing. We've
yeah,
got lots of great talent. We've got lots of great people that are keen to promote the European comedy,
Yeah.
and that's what we're trying to do. Um, and everyone's really committed, and I think having a kind of like an umbrella in which
Mm,
people can perform under
mm.
is really good. So hopefully, you know, going forward, we could do the festivals. We can have a part of the festival that's European shows
Yeah.
for your, you know. So there's a few different things that we do, but it also, this idea of taking back the power comes from the power was never given to us.
Mm.
Like we just never felt like we had necessarily like a platform.
I feel like when it comes to the UK, right, like the way they categorize people, it's so surface level because, like you said, sometimes the different people that they cater to, it's only like a handful. What if you're different from the different people? You feel me? Now
Yeah.
you're like another level of being different. It's like in the UK, or I've never been to America, so I can't comment on it. But in the UK, like if you're like black and from London, you're like their idea of like, oh, okay, black, you know, he's like
Yeah.
British and stuff. But if you're just like a black guy like me who doesn't live in London, who lives in a totally different part of the country, doesn't even, you know, like
Then you're just a black guy.
then he's just a black guy. Then now they're confused. They're like, "Damn, well, what do we do with this black guy? He's not from London. He's not talking about the topics that, you know, because I cannot go on stage and lie to you about some life in London that I've never lived. But I can tell you about all this boring shit that's happening in my village and make that funny. So I have felt that too, bro. I felt like even amongst the different people, I am different from them, you know. So
Yeah, I
like,
think in their effort to make more, in their effort to create more inclusiveness, they actually create more segregation,
mm.
because now people are thinking more and more, especially people in the entertainment business. They've been in what box do I fit in? Where can I go? And I'm
Bro.
like, this is kind of, I think this is the opposite of the concept that you're trying to create. If you're
Mm.
talking about inclusiveness, don't put people into a box that they feel is like, okay, you're a brown kind of Pakistani
Yeah.
background. You're black from this. You know, you're Latino from this. Whatever. I don't think that helps. I think that idea of inclusiveness actually leads to more people feeling more isolated and people feeling like they don't even belong. Like you're saying, you know, if you're a black guy and you're from London, maybe you get, you know, certain opportunities. But all of a sudden, you don't even feel like you're a part of the black community anymore because you're like, fucking hell, I'm a black from outside of London. So you're getting double segregated. Like I'm black and not in the capital.
Oh my God. That's my, you know, so bro, listen, this is literally the stuff that I think about. And I am so happy that you brought this up. And I'll tell you what, if you have a show in Barcelona, I would come do it for free just so I can watch a Barcelona match afterwards. Like I was in Barcelona like 2019, and I remember that was like one of the most fun, like, you know, times I had of late, you know, because it's just a vibe, man. Europe, mainland Europe, is just, it's a
Yeah.
cool vibe, you know. It's
And there's a lot of opportunity. Actually, if you like, you know, I've done, when I was living in London, actually, I couldn't afford to even if when you're getting booked into the clubs,
yeah,
it's like, okay, you get a weekend here and then I will book you in 6 months
mm,
or we'll book you in a year or whatever. So what happens in the middle? So all of a sudden, kind of Europe was a huge opportunity. There's a lot of gigs happening, um, and people just, and there's a big difference between comedy in the UK and comedy abroad as a performer, is
mm,
because comedy in the UK, people are almost like, they're like, okay, what have you got? Whereas like in Europe, they're just happy you're there. They're like, oh my God,
yeah.
thanks for coming. Like stand-up's
Oh,
new. It's a new thing. Stand-up's been introduced in the last few years with Netflix and Amazon
yeah,
and YouTube. So
yeah.
it's super new. So they're like, oh my God, like
Oh,
what have you
bro,
got?
I would kill it in Barcelona. I mean, obviously, you're not supposed to say that, but I tell you what, I would be so excited, man, just to like go there, do a show, spend a weekend, watch Pasta play, and then go home. That to me, that's the dream. You feel what
Yeah, bro. Well, listen, I can put you in contact with a couple of the people that run some shows out there,
definitely.
if you want. And I mean that's what it's all about, you know, bringing each other up, helping out each other, and I think one of the great things about Europe geographically,
Yeah.
you could easily do like, so for example, like there's a small runs like
Mm.
Austria Bratislava and another country like or like from Budapest to Austria, it's 1 hour. So
Yeah.
I once did a gig in Budapest, got on the bus, went to Austria, did a show in Vienna, and then went somewhere
Yeah.
else. So I'm saying like you'll drive 5 hours to go to London for an open mic or to Liverpool, whereas actually in Europe you could do 4 countries within the space of a few hours.
Oh,
So it's much more, it's cheaper, it's completely new audiences, and it's a new country. Like it's really cool because
yeah.
it's a different language, a different food,
Oh
and
man, the opening jokes would just be like, "Hey guys, are you here? Your women look so much." Man, I can just start thinking about how I'd open this. I get so excited because I start visualizing it in my head and stuff like that. But
it's awesome, man. You meet loads of cool people. Um, you meet like completely different communities of stand-up
yeah,
and people trying to like build it up in their own places, and and then it's kind of a different thing altogether. It's not like in the UK you kind of have this path almost that's kind of set for you. You have to do this and then you'll get this, and then once you do this then you'll get that. Whereas in Europe it's a bit of a wild west, like because comedy is new, so
yeah,
everyone's just like, and there are some guys like Victor Patrishkan. I don't know
yeah.
if you know him.
Nah,
He
no,
used to
yeah.
do the roast battles in London.
Okay, all right. I'm familiar with the brand, but I can always look up.
So he was the roast battle champion.
Yeah,
And what Victor's doing is, so he started touring Europe by himself. He learned about how Facebook ads work
yeah,
just by trial and error,
yeah.
and he started doing his own ads. And
All
then
right.
he goes, okay, I'm gonna do a fucking village in Sweden that he's never been to.
And
He
it's
finds
that's
a fucking pub, say, can I do a show there? They're like, great, and he promotes it, and people come.
oh,
You know what I mean?
bro,
Like,
yo,
he's a full-time traveling comic,
wow,
and it's so impressive what he does. And there's a couple of people out there doing the same, and they're
yeah.
just carving out their own audience from town to town, almost like traveling salesmen.
Oh, bro. Do you know what? You have actually inspired me so much. And I'm going to name this podcast Taking Back the Power. Because that's what we're doing, man.
Woo!
Getting rid of the structure that has been forced upon us. Because, bro, like sometimes I try to think, right? Like when you take away race and skin color, how do you define yourself as a comedian? And then I started thinking, man, I'm actually a philosopher or a teacher at the very least, you know, and those are aspects of me that I feel would be the same even if I was Indian, white, Spanish, or whatever. So
Yeah.
there's so many aspects of me that I need to explore without having necessarily to always talk about race because obviously, like, you know, it's something that I talk about and stuff, but like sometimes maybe it's because that's what the audience expects of me and that's what they want to hear. But I really just want to like, there's so many aspects of who I am. So the idea that there's this European circuit opening up means that I can just go to a place where maybe they don't necessarily have black people there. So they might not, you know, or they might not be well vested in like, oh, all these issues. So we can talk about different things. I'm like, hey guys, I'm here in Bulgaria to talk about philosophy and life and disregard
You could do
and
whatever you want, man.
oh man.
There's no barrier. I mean, I think the idea that we get attached to certain things, it's also because maybe when you're you know early days in your comedy, which I still think we are, you're
Yeah,
looking for stuff that you can just grab onto. And like
yeah,
race is a thing you can grab onto. It's like, great, I can talk about this
yeah,
and it's easier because people see it. Right? Then as you develop as a comedian, then you start to get the tools, the technical tools to explore those different things, right? I mean, I still talk about a lot about being a foreigner when I'm in the UK and being broke, because those are the two main things that that I am. Everyone can relate to, is like in London. Oh, he's an immigrant and he doesn't have any money. Great, we can grab onto that. But but that's also because you don't have an audience. You have a 10 spot, a 20-minute spot. You know, you have to just be like bang, 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 bang. There's no time to like get in deep. Whereas, you know, hopefully one day we'll have our audiences a little bit more carved out, and we'll be able to do kind of the longer 1 hour shows. And then at that point, we'll be able to explore a little bit of who we are. You know, I'm trying to work on my first hour now. And a lot of the things I want to talk about is, you know, my identity, who I am, and how do I feel about things? Because I'm also super attached to the idea. You were talking about being attached to being Black. I'm attached to being a comedian. So I wonder who I am as a person without, because being people like that, almost the first thing I say in a conversation, I'm a comedian. And if it doesn't come up naturally, I'll find a way to get it there.
Like, yo,
you know what I mean?
And pick anything random. Like, you see that dog running? Oh yeah, you must be chasing a comedian. I know that because I'm a comedian too.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, you're gonna be in psychotherapy, and you're gonna be like, "Can you tell me about this tragic event?" It's like, "Well, I remember my uncle. He came to me, sat on the couch, he started touching my leg." And I remember because I was watching Richard Pryor live at Sunset. And Richard Pryor is probably what got me into comedy. Have I mentioned I'm a comedian? And so you just find ways that 5 minutes have gone by and I've not said I'm a comedian. So the pandemic happened away. And now you're like, fuck, like, what would I even be? Am I interesting? Do I offer any value to the world? If I don't tell jokes for a living? Because if I don't tell jokes for a living, I'm honestly just an unemployed bum. Do you know what I mean? Without jokes, I'm like...
But do you know the crazy thing? Even if you were employed in another sector that would give you money, man, if you're not telling jokes, man, a part of you would not be, you know, it would just be like, I feel like if I was like a minister or a doctor, if I'm not doing stand-up, man, a part of me just feels like, I wouldn't say it would be dead, but I would miss the stage, man.
Oh, 100%. I think, dude, 100%. There's that idea of, like, you walk down the street almost like you've got a superpower that no one knows about. You're going to Tesco's and you're like, you don't know, but I'm a comedian.
Bro.
You're like, you have this kind of thing that's special that no one knows about. And it's nice. When I was working jobs in London, I would get fired all of the time because they'd be like, oh, I got like a 20 spot to close in somewhere. And I'm like, I can't. They're like, no, but you've got to work. You need to be here tomorrow. And it's like, no, I got this gig in Holland. I need to get on a flight and go there. It'll be like, and I remember my friend asked me, it's like, how much does it pay? Like 100 euros. He was like, so you're going to go to Holland, probably lose money, and you're going to lose your job, which is your regular income. But I'm like, there's just no other option in which, do you know what I mean? Like, my regular income isn't that important to me as nailing this spot.
Yeah. Hey, listen, that's a good place to end this podcast. Do you have anything you want to plug before I let you go?
Not really. I mean, check out the Comedians of Europe. Great initiative. They're going to be in your town somewhere because we're going to be going everywhere. And just follow me on the socials. And I appreciate you having me, bro.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Andre. It's been a massive pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you very much. Could I have you back? You got so much good stuff, man. Peace.
See you later.